Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about this DHT11 temperature and humidity sensor. And we're going to talk about two different programs. The first one, we're just going to deal with the sensor itself. So ignore the button for this first bit of code. And also note that this sensor has 4 pins from left to right. And I pulled it so you could see that. Pin 1 is going to 3.3 volts. Pin 2 is going right here to the corner pin on the Pico, which is GP16, physical pin 21, GPIO 16. And then you skip the third pin, and then the last pin goes to ground. And I'm going to go ahead and just plug that back in. And let me tell y'all, this guy's kind of finicky. I got it to where it's working well now, but it's a finicky little thing. So let's go ahead and talk about this code right here, and we're going to import pen from machine, and then we're going to import the Micropython library, sleep and time. And then we're also going to import the DHT library, and specifically DHT11, as you see here. And this DHT library is included in the standard Micropython install. So we're going to set data pin to 16. That's that pin on the corner that I was talking about. Let's see. Here we go. I'll show that. That's the pin on the corner that I was talking about a minute ago. And then this is where it gets kind of weird. We actually have to, before we even create the sensor object, we need to configure that pin. And we're going to do sensor pin as the variable here. And that's where we're going to use the data pin, which is 16. And the weird thing is we are configuring this as an output, even though this is a sensor, which would normally be an input. And we also are activating the pull-down resistor, internal pull-down resistor of that pin. Now that we have that pin configured, we are going to declare our sensor object using DHT11 and sensor pin. After that, we are doing a 2-second sleep, and that is something that I read that is a good idea after you first create your DHT11 object. Give it a couple of seconds to stabilize before your code continues. And then this is our heading for our output, which is going to be down here in the terminal. And then here is the main loop. And the way this sensor works is you use sensor.measure, and that's not going to output anything. That's just going to cause the DHT11 to take a measurement of temperature and humidity, but it stores it locally. So the next thing we have to do is to actually get those values, and the way we do that, we're going to assign temp C, which is the temperature in Celsius, to the sensor.temperature method, just like that. And then same thing for humidity. Hum equals sensor.humidity. And then finally, we're going to display this information to the terminal, and we're going to, the \R combined with end equals nothing, with all the stuff we want to print in between. That's the format you use whenever you want to keep refreshing on the same line instead of having your data scroll. So we're going to have a temp heading, and then we're going to print the temperature followed by the degree character and a Celsius text label, and then humidity with the hum variable followed by percentage. And then another thing about, I'm telling you, these things are finicky. Another thing about this sensor is you don't want to read it more than once a second. So we're putting a sleep of 1, which means the whole program is going to stop for a second before it goes back up again. So let's go ahead and give this a run, and hopefully it'll work. Okay, it's working. It's reading 19 degrees Celsius and 44% humidity. So it is working, and it is reading every second. It is refreshing, and we can't see it because the information isn't changing. But it's running, and looks like it's solid. So we're going to now talk about the second part of this, and that is adding this button right here to, this is GPIO 15 that is hooked up to, and the other side is hooked up to ground. And what the desired result is every time we hit the button, it's going to toggle the output to the terminal between Fahrenheit or Celsius. So we can find out what the temperature is in Fahrenheit or Celsius depending on the toggle position of that button. So let's take a look at this code. This is the updated code, a little bit longer. Same setup right here. We are adding a butt pin of 15 like I was talking about. And if you watched any of the previous videos, we are actuating, or we are making button state true only when the button has been pressed down and then released. So we need to set the button state now, which is the current read of the button. We're setting button state old, which is the last read of the button, and we're setting button state to false. So this is the same thing we did last time with the sensor pin and setting up the DHT11, sleeping for 2 seconds. And then we're also having to declare or define our button object here. And that is going to be an input, and it is going to be using the internal pull-up resistor. And then here's the heading again. So there is something that we need to do differently this time. If you remember last time, we used, if I look at this other code, we used a 1 second delay with this sleep command here, and that was so that we would only read the temperature or the sensor once a second. We didn't want to read it any more often than that. But the problem is, in this code, we also are having to, or we want to constantly check this button. So if we put a 1 second delay in this code, when it's sleeping for that second, if somebody presses and releases that button, it's not going to work because the program's not even running. It's sleeping. So we need a different way to ensure that the sensor doesn't read too often. So this is what I came up with. Last read equals time. So what this is doing, it's pulling the current time since the last epoch, I think is what it's called. Or if you don't, or it could be the time since the last system restart. Whatever the case, whatever it is, we're setting last read to that time. And then we enter our loop. And this last read is going to come back into play in a second. We also have, so we're checking our button state now. So we're going to read the button value to find out if it's pressed down or up. If button state now equals 1 and button state old equals 0, which means we have a button depress and release. That's what we're looking for. We want to trigger on the transition. Then button state equals not button state, which just means the button state is toggled. And then at the end of that, we're going to make button state old equal to button state now. That's resetting that variable basically. So now that we get to this part, we have our button red. Now that we get to this part, we are going to take that. We're going to take the time currently right here minus the last red, which we took up here the first time. And if that difference in time is greater than or equal to 2 seconds, then we are going to go ahead and enter this if statement and go ahead and pull that sensor. If it hasn't been long enough yet, it's just going to go all the way down to the bottom and come back up again and try again. And it's going to keep doing that until this is greater than or equal to 2 seconds. So, or actually it's going to go all the way up here. Excuse me. So once it does enter this part of the loop, last red is going to be reset to the current time. And then we're going to go ahead and take the measurement. We're going to get the temperature and the humidity. And then we are going to, if the button state is true, then we are going to output the data in Fahrenheit, or the temperature in Fahrenheit. And if button state is false, it'll automatically fall into this else statement, and it's going to output in Celsius. So I hope that makes sense. We have a lot of stuff going on here, but basically we are reading this button, and we are also every 2 seconds we are taking a measurement here, and then based on the status of based on button state being true or false, we'll either display the temperature in Fahrenheit or Celsius. So let's go ahead and cross our fingers, give this code a run, and see what happens this time. Okay, so we're currently reading in Celsius, and so I should be able to press the button and release it. And keep in mind, I haven't done it yet, keep in mind that once I press the button and release, it could be up to 2 seconds before we see that next reading happen. Okay, you see it took about a second or so, and then we ended up getting 66 degrees Fahrenheit and 44% humidity. And then if we do it again, and notice if we hold it down, I'm going to hold it down for a little while. It's not going to change until I let up, and the next time it displays, it's going to be in Fahrenheit again. So yeah, fun little program. I'm going to put both of this code down below. I'll put this larger program probably in the description, and I'll put this part, or this first bit of code, down in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, y'all.